What's going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around the SWAC West coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the Swag Talk crew for 99 cents and get down with the get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, swag smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Yo, SWAC Talk. Light on the mic, it's a play. Sewell's the guy taking us state to state. Catch us Wednesday, Sunday, stats on the buffet. From Grand Baron to the court, we got the say. Football spirals, hoop dreams in the chat. Chopping it up, deep dives on every stat. Texas to Florida, repping border to border. Arkansas to Bama, the vibe getting warmer. SWAC Talk, keep the knowledge on deck. Sewell spinning wisdom, gotta show respect. Facts flying higher than a wide receiver's check. From football to hoops, what y'all expect? Guests roll through, dropping stories untold. Legends from the SWAC, spitting straight gold. Locker room vibe, secrets unfold. CW heavy like a championship hold. The South's got a rhythm, a culture to match. Each stat, each fact, another door latch. SWAC Talk connects like a perfect pass catch. From Alabama skies to Florida's grass patch. SWAC Talk, keep the energy alive. Wednesday to Sunday, where the legends thrive. Facts and stats sharper than a coach's knife. Balling on the mic, that's how we survive. Keep the energy alive. Wednesday to Sunday where the legends thrive. Facts and stats sharper than a coach's knife. Balling on the mic, that's how we survive. That's how we survive.
All right, everybody, what is going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. Of course, I am your tour guide around the swag. See what else coming at you. And today we're just gonna do a quick little 2025 order of finished video. We're gonna do a more in-depth one after Media Day. So with Media Day being only a couple weeks away, I wanted to kind of go ahead and put my thoughts out there real quick and just kind of say where I think everybody gonna finish right now. But of course, this is still super early. That's why I call this the kind of early 2025 order of finish, because it's still early. And like I mean, hit Media Day, so so much can change between now and even then. And then even by the time the season starts. So I'll save my more in-depth one once I get to my previews and everything. This one is just kind of off the cuff, and we're not gonna take long with it. Just want to put it out there so I can have something early on video. So with that being said, man, y'all make sure y'all follow that spiel that I do at the beginning of the show, man, and hit that join button to become a member. Shout out to our newest member, Kirk Martin. Shout out to him for joining. Like I said, 99 cents gets you there. We're gonna be dropping members only videos, members only shorts, and all kind of different things there. So if you want to become a part of that, hit that, get that shout out, and rock with the Swag Talk crew. So let's go ahead and jump into this, man. And I based this off of my 20th for entertainment purposes only series, where I did my season win totals and championship odds. Those videos are there. The links will be in the description for both of those. So if you haven't seen those, you can go back and check them out. So basically, with that, I kind of put together my order of finish because I with win totals, I kind of could slot teams where I wanted to slot them, and go from there. So this is basically just gonna be me saying who's gonna finish where and what I think the conference record would be. Of course, there's a lot of moving pieces between in this portion of the season, and so we'll start with the East, and we're gonna go from 6-1 in both divisions. One, I think one is no brainer in the East, but we got to do it anyway. So we'll start with number 6 and work our way up. And I kind of give a couple of reasons why I have these teams where they are at this point. And of course, these teams can move as I go through my previews and maybe learn a little bit more about some of these teams, or a couple moves here and there, having or whatever. So um, one thing about this season is there are a lot of coaches who are new. There's not a lot of coaches who have been in the place that they are, that they have been for a long time. So if you just look at the East Division, Valley, new coach. I think Coach Woody. I think he's in his 3rd year. Alabama A&M new coach. Coach Coles is in his new coach in his 2nd year. Coach E-Rob is the longest tenured coach in the division, if not in the conference. Coach TC is in his 3rd year. In the SWAC West, Pine Bluff, Coach Hampton in his 3rd year, Coach Dishman in his 2nd year, Coach Joseph in his 2nd year, Coach Thomas in his 2nd year, Coach Jackson in his 1st year, Coach Graves in his 2nd year. So there's a lot of basically new coaches or coaches who aren't very tenured in their programs, and most of the teams haven't really fully fleshed out their programs. So there's gonna be a lot of wiggle room. Yeah, I like to obviously use the previous year as kind of a baseline for the following season. But even with that, with so many new faces and coaches who haven't been in their stops long, that can still change. So this is very volatile, and it's gonna kind of fluctuate, and a lot of it all just come down to who you like. And so that makes this, kind of interesting, but it makes it also kind of nerve wracking. But, that's why I do what I do. So let's go ahead and start. And with number 6 in the East, we had the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils. Um, Coach Terrell Buckley in his 1st season leading the Delta Devils. New slate, um, basically losing basically almost any key contributor on this team, with the exception of like the Fabian Fant and maybe their kicker. They're losing a lot of production on a team that didn't really have a great record to begin with. I gave them a season win total of 1.5. So if you were betting over or under, you'll bet over or under 1.5 wins. So basically, either 2 wins or less. Um, that gives them a SWAC record of 1-7. There's not a lot there for them when you look at it on paper in terms of what I could perceive as wins or even toss ups. So it's going to be a tough road for them, and that's why they're in that spot. They're probably the worst of the lower level teams right now. That doesn't mean they can't get better, but they're probably the worst of the lower level teams where we stand right now, with a lot of room for improvement, and that's why they're there. Bethune-Cookman is number 5, and even though they're 2-6, even though I had them picked at 2-6, and I think I had them with a season win total of 2.5. I think there's still a gap between them and Valley. I don't think they're necessarily a team that is in danger of finishing last. I think if they finish in last, obviously that means they probably lost the Valley, and the wheels super fell off, because this team is competitive most times. They don't really get blown out a whole lot. They have a lot of games where they have chances to win. If you look at the Southern game, they should have, by all intents and purposes, won that game. I mean, that was a 5 overtime game, but you led it 3-0 the whole first 3 quarters. Um, you had close games. You were in the FAMU game. You had a chance in that game. You had a flurry of points against Bama State, although you ultimately ended up losing by I think 5. You did get monkey stomped by Alabama A&M, but you had beat them the year before. You were tied with Jackson State. You weren't going to beat them. I'm not even say you were going to win that game, but you were tied at half, which meant you were in that game. So you had those opportunities in those games, but one thing or another keeps them from getting over the hump. And so that's why, I think that there still is a little gap between those two teams. I think they're closer to number 4 than they are to number 6. Um, and that's more of a testament of what the number 4 team is more than what the number 6 team is. So I have Bethune there. It's kind of a default spot. Number 5. I think the top 3 are settled. Number 4 is kind of settled. So basically, the top 4 are settled. And you just work them in. You work them in your order. And Bethune falls after that. So speaking of number 4 is Alabama A&M and Coach Sam Shade in his first year. I have them with a conference record of 4-4, which is basically where they were before. And I give them 5, a win total of 5. A lot of they have they have some good offensive pieces returning. Obviously, you add another quarterback to the mix. The running game, if you're losing some very key pieces, their offensive line is still solid. Receiving core, you're losing some pieces, but you still have some talent there. Defensively, I think is where you're looking at this team. Can they take a step that they hadn't taken in a few years? And Miles is a team that's been solid defensively. They run the ball, they play good defense. So can Coach Shea bring that over with him? That's something that you're probably gonna have to wait and see as you move throughout the schedule. You don't always find out your team's a very good defensive team right out the gate. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks to kind of gel there. But I think 4 is a safe spot for them. I mean, I don't think they're close enough to the teams in front of them to put them above anybody, but I definitely think they're far enough in front of the teams below them to not put them anywhere below that. Now, if you have your doubts about a new coach and all of that to go with it, I still don't see them below 4. So I think 4 is just a safe spot for them. If you feel it froggy, maybe you can put them at 3. But that I think that's going to require them, winning a couple games that I don't have them winning. But it's not impossible. But I think right now, I think they're safely at the 4th spot. And now 2 and 3, I think it just depends on how you feel about these programs. I put FAMU at 3 because not so much because I don't think that they're going to be an improved team. I think they will be better. I think obviously offensively they have a very good running game, and it was criminal that they didn't use more last season. I do think they're going to run the ball a lot more this season, which can help with the quarterback issue. The offensive line is still really good, which has been since they've been in the conference. Um, Defensively, you lost some guys, and then you lost some unexpected guys. So you want to see them be more physical on defense. You want to see them stop the run more, which was something that they kind of struggled with last season at times. They kind of started to get better as the season went on. Before that couple of week that nightmare 2 weeks they had toward the end of the season, I thought they started to turn the corner defensively at that point, but things just kind of went sideways. Um, I don't think they're out of a chance to finish number 2. I don't know if they got enough to beat JSU. Obviously, if you ask a FAMU fan, they're gonna say yes. You ask a Jackson State fan, they're gonna say no. As an outside person, you gotta say you don't know. And I have the Rattlers with a win total of I have them with a win total of 8. And they have a decently favorable schedule. I mean, they have the one FBS game, but they have a couple tough non-conference games against MEAC opponents. So it could go either way. But the schedule shapes up pretty well. They got decent home games. Not too many tough road games. Um, and so to me, I really the same thing with Bama State. Their schedule basically comes down to the Jackson State and Bama State game. If they can navigate them games, then they'll be in a better spot. If they can't, then they won't. It's simple. That's why I feel like it's all in the eye of the beholder when you look at those Those basically two teams at 2-3. So that's why I have FAMU there. I have them finishing with a record of 6-2, I believe. Excuse me. Yeah, I have them at 6-2, which I have them tied with Bama State at 6-2. But I have Bama State beating them in a tiebreaker. So um, basically, each team loses to Jackson State, and one team beats the other, and then the other team drops another game, and that's how you end up at 6-2. So basically, cat out of the bag. I got Bama State at 2. Um, not as much hype around the Hornets as there was last season. Last season Bama State was really the darling, the belle of the ball. This season is a little bit quieter, but I think this team is going to be a better offensive team than they were last year. Obviously, a lot of that is on the health of the quarterback position. For them to finish what they did last season, even with playing the fifth string quarterback, wide receiver as we know at this point. Is a testament A to how great their defense was, and B how really good they were at running the football. They really were able to kind of maintain some things, even though the offense wasn't going in the direction they wanted it to go. I think the offense will be better this season. Like I said, you're either going to have an experienced a guy who started 8 games and and basically got better in most of those games. Or you're going to have an experienced quarterback who you're looking to have a bounce back year. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those. So I think that puts their offense in a better position starting than their defense. I think their running game is going to be good, and you add a running quarterback, well, a dual threat quarterback to that mix. That makes your offense even more. They got guys who can catch, who makes plays catching the ball. They have a solid offensive line. Defensively, I think they're still going to be good. I don't know if they're going to be as good as they were last year because they do have some huge holes to fill, but they've been doing that since this team been together. Even if you go back, to a few years ago, even before Coach Erod, this team always was a good defensive team, and they lost guys, they added guys. And so I won't ever count this defense out. I think that defense is enough, even at this point, to get you those tough games. And if you can find yourself in a position where you can win a close game, then you got a kicker who missed a game-winning kick, but is working hard to not have that happen again. So this team may not be defensively where they were last year, but I think they may be a step better offensively than they were last year. And that's why I had them at 6-2 in at number 2. Number 1 is, it goes without saying, and that's Jackson State. The Tigers won the SWAC last year, won the Celebration Bowl. Coming into this season, I don't think very many people are not going to have them at the top of the conference. If you don't, yeah, I mean, obviously that's on you, but I don't really see why not. I mean, they're returning a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Um, they they're still improving. Guys are still getting better. A lot of guys were, ahead of schedule. And now they're actually where they should be. So they're definitely the top team in the league and easy number one choice. I mean, easy number one choice for the East and easy number one choice for the conference as a whole. Not a lot to really say against that. I have them at 8-0, which I mean they do have some games that maybe could trip them up. But it's gonna, it's nothing. It's never a certain and just cut and dry. But on paper, at the end of June, beginning of July, you go with those guys pretty simply. That takes us to the West, and the West is way more chaotic than the East. I really think you can go the top 5 team, 1 through 5. And I would not be against you saying any of those 5 teams could win a division. Now everybody's at a varying level of that, but I could honestly hear out an argument for any of the teams 1 through 5 to win the division. Number 6, I think they took a lot of losses, which they already had lost a lot of games last season, and they lost all their key guys from last season. Um, and they got gutted even after the spring in the portal. So number 6 is pretty straightforward, and that's UAPB. The Golden Lions, man, they've been ravaged by the portal after the season, after the spring. Probably whenever it can be used against them, it has. You lose your top quarterback, you lose your top right receiver, two guys who were both tops in the conference, or at least top two in the conference at their respective positions. You lose, key guys on defense. You lose depth guys. You lose guys who were next in line at some point, and you're not really matching what you lost with what you're bringing in. And it's been the cycle for the last few years, so it's hard to kind of not be in a state of rebuild. I had the Golden Lions with a season win total of 2.5. I that's deceiving because they have two non D1 games that I just don't like on their schedule. So, I mean, basically, if you look at games against equal opponents, that I have them for a half a win, and that's a toss-up game against Bethune-Cookman. I have them at 1-7 um, in the conference. Now, for them to probably get that, they're gonna have to win a game on the road in conference, which they did not do last year. When I thought the team, even though their team struggled at times, I thought that team was on paper better than what they are right now. So if that team couldn't win on the road, it may be tough for this team to win on the road. And if they can't win on the road, um, they may not win a conference game. I mean, when you look at their home games, again, I'm not saying all these games are just slam dunk losses, but you're looking at games where this team would definitely not be favored at home. Their three conference games at home are Grambling, Southern, and FAMU. Um, those games they're gonna be underdogs, and so that you have that you have at Bama State, they're gonna be underdogs there. You have at Prairie View, they're gonna be underdogs there. Texas Southern, they're probably gonna be underdog in that game as well. Alcorn in Memphis, they'll be an underdog in that game. The only game that they're not, or they probably won't be a big underdog is Bethune, and that's a road game. So it's tough to find W's on the schedule, and then you have Texas Tech and Central Arkansas. That, other than those two, Lincoln and Westgate Christian, who I don't even know if they're gonna have a football team by the time the season come around. I don't know nothing about that team. I'm just saying that it would not surprise me one way or the other. But there's not a lot there. And so it's gonna take some magic, and it's gonna take some work, and it's gonna take some upsets for them to even win a game or two. So that's why I said I thought Valley was the worst team in that bottom group. I might can hear argument for Pine Bluff being worse because I think their schedule is worse. And that makes it harder. But I have them at 1-7, being generous, giving them that one dub somewhere on that schedule. Next up is number 5, and again, now you can put people anywhere. And I would not be against it, but I have Texas Southern at number 5. What else? I have Texas Southern at number 5. They have they lost some, again, like a lot of people, they lost some key contributors on their offense. They lost one of the top running backs. They lost a guy who basically started most of the season at quarterback, but they returned the guy who started the season at quarterback. They lost some defensive pieces, but they brought in some people. I think that they're a team. The reason why I have them here, and they finished relatively strong. Um, for them, they finished third last season, which was definitely a surprise. Um, I think be they still have to kind of prove that they can, hurt you with their offense. I don't think the offense really hurt very many people. And defensively, I thought they played above their pay grade a few times, but I don't count them out because they do play up. They're not scared to be physical, and they're not scared to play ugly games. And when you are like that, you find yourself in a lot of games. And when you find yourself in games, then you can find yourself winning those games. Um, and keep yourself in the hunt. But I had them at 4-4, and obviously they're gonna have to come up on top against the majority of the division, and they did pretty solidly. I think they were 3-2 against the division last season, so That's not, that's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Again, a 3-2 mark would find you in a decent spot here. Um, I have them with 6 wins, which is an improvement from last season. So I think, I think that they have a good chance. They do have a, a tough, basically a tougher closeout going to Bama State and Southern, and you go, and you get ground on the road toward the middle of the season. But you don't play FAMU, you don't play Jackson State. Um, that helps a lot. Just little things like that help a lot. Um, and that's not to say, FAMU, just a Goliath, but that's a team that you don't have to worry about playing. That's one of the top teams in the division. You're only really playing one top division opponent from the other side, so that definitely um, helps you there. If you can, you know, do well in your non-division games, go. Let's say you go 2-1, and then you go 3-2, you're 5-3, and 5-3 could win the West. So it's not, it's not impossible. It's not fifth is not an indicative. It's not being indicative of them being a bad team. It's just this division is somewhere, and people got to be put somewhere. Groundland, I had them at number 4. Um, like I said, I think Gremlin, they lost some real big pieces. They lost they lost the top 3 rushers. They lost their all everything linebacker, but they have a defense that was really good at turning the ball over. It was that's kind of feast or famine, and when it works, you find them winning games like the Jackson State game. When it doesn't work, then you have those other games. But they had a lot of one score games last season that they came up on the short end of the stick. Those games could have very well went the other way, and they could have had a different record. But I have them at 4-4, right there in that log jam. I think I had them also with 6 wins overall. So they're again, they have a lot of I think out of the bunch, they have a lot of things to kind of look at. But I like some of the pieces that they brought in. Um, I like the 2 quarterbacks that they brought in. I think if either one of those guys gets the job, I think that position is gonna be really good if they can find somebody to kind of replace the explosiveness of Javon Robinson. Um, I like Tylon Williams. The kid was electric in the classic. I thought defensively they played really well in that game. I thought special teams they played well in that game. Offensively, they just did not get it done at all, and that's the way that team was moving toward the end of the season. The offense just was not consistently there. If they can shore that up, and the defense can, not even force as many turnovers as they did last year, but be in that range, and the offense can, can put some things together, then this team definitely has a great chance of finishing higher than 4th. Um, I'm just one of the people, man. I'm not afraid of being picked 4th. You know what I'm saying? Like unless my team is like a defending champ and I'm returning like 18 or 19 starters, I don't care if you put me 4th because I feel like my team is going to overcome that. And 4th is not that big of a deal in a division like this because all it takes is a couple wins. You can, like I said before with TSU, if you can go 5-3 in the conference on the West Side, you are right there in the hunt. Alcorn finished at 5-3, and they were basically a couple, basically one Southern loss from being tied for the division. So you always are right there in the hunt in the SWAC West at this point because the SWAC is cyclical. Some years the East is the chaotic one, and the West is the one that's top heavy. So you just you're never out of the hunt. And so if you can keep yourself in the mix, then you're gonna be good. I have Alcorn at number 3. Um, Braves, they also had some big losses. They lose some. Oh wait, what am I doing? The Braves, they have they have some key things to fill in. They're losing a quarterback, although I feel like at times, I think quarterback play was kind of up and down, especially in the passing game. The running game was solid. You returned Jacorian Sewell, who I think is the top returning back in the league. Um, so that helps you. I think your defense still, they lost some key pieces, but I think The defense is always going to beat up for Alcorn. It's just being able to, win those games that you just haven't been able to win in recent years. So, um, they start off, with 3 games on the road, 4 technically, because you play Pine Bluff and Memphis. I do have the Braves at 4-4. I had them with 6 conference wins. Um, you got a pretty solid home slate of games that you can win. Grambling and Southern are games later in the season that you have a good chance of winning at home. Maybe on the road, those games might not be wins, but at home they more slide your way. You got Valley and Prairie View, who is definitely a wild card. Um, who knows? But you get that and Pine Bluff and the Nugent site. You got to go to Jackson State and FAMU, which are 2 tough places to play. And you got to go to Texas Southern, which is somewhere that you had a rough outing the last time that you were there when you had a chance to win the division. So I think all in all, the schedule, it doesn't, it's not a murderer's row, but it does have some rocky spots in it. The first 4 games away from home, um, are gonna, they're gonna shape you, what I mean? And so I'm always higher on Alcorn than a lot of other people. So I may be a little bit higher on Alcorn at this point. And like I say, you can slide them wherever you want. But I always think they're gonna be right there in the mix just because they run the ball, they play defense. I always feel like those things keep teams in the hunt um, in a division like this. And like I said, now Prairie View is at number 2. I had them at 5-3. Um, Everything that I'm gonna say is kind of gonna go against where I have them. I had the Panthers sitting there with 6.5 wins, 5-3 in conference. I have no clue. Honestly, like I think the potential for the team is there, but when you bring in so many guys, there's so much unknown. You have a new coaching staff. The energy is there, the belief is there. A lot of things I like about PV, but you know where to put them was tough. I couldn't really see myself putting them too low because I think this team is going to be good. But I almost feel like maybe I should have put them more in the middle, but I don't know. Um, they're either gonna, like I say, early in the season, they're either gonna be in great shape or they're not. And if things start off rough, I don't know if I don't know if they're built to turn that around right now, with so much newness. I think this team has to avoid as much adversity as they can. I mean, obviously every team does, but some teams are built for adversity. And when you're in this position, who knows if things are not going right. Maybe things kind of slide off the rails. But if things are going good with a team like this, they're only going to get better. And this could be a situation where you need to get these guys now. And I think they have a decent opportunity. They're so front loaded in the division every year that you're gonna know where they're after their first 3 or 4 conference games. I mean, their first 4 conference games are at Texas Southern, Grambling in Dallas, at Alcorn, and at Southern. So their first 4 conference games are division games. So they're either gonna be right there in the mix, or they're gonna be basically fighting for their lives like last season. And sometimes that's fine. You kind of know where you stand. Once you get to the halfway point, but you lose if you drop those games, you lose the opportunity to really play catch up. Because to me, the easiest way to play catch up is to beat the teams that's in front of you. And if you've already played them and lost to them, then you need them to start losing games. And everybody's not gonna you're not gonna have that 2022 situation all the time where 2 or 3 teams lose on the last game of the season. That kind of stuff is not always going to happen. So it's imperative to win games, period. But when you have so many division games early, it's very much imperative to win those games so you don't have to play catch up. And that's why I'm not quite sure what this team is going to be, because I don't know how this team is going to face that kind of stuff. Inside the building, they probably know, or at least they got a better idea because they're inside the building. But outside the building, I don't know, but with the division being the way it is, 5-3, I can put them there and feel okay with it. And finally, I have Southern basically as the I don't want to say the tallest midget, but like I said, I don't think Southern is a bad team. I think Southern might actually be a little bit better than they were last year, but I think their record might not be. For one thing, they get Jackson State as a conference opponent again, so that if you drop that game counts in the conference. So you go from like a 7-1 last season to a 6-2 this year. Um, FAMU is always rocky for Southern. Those are two games that on paper at this point, I could not put Southern as winning. Alcorn is a tough place to play. You get Tech Southern, who has played them close the last couple of years and probably should have beat them both times the last two seasons. Prairie View, we don't know. Um, Bethune, first, second time in Daytona ever. Um, and Grambling is the classic. So Southern schedule is not easy, and you get Alabama State out of conference and Valley out of state out of conference. And, y'all know how I feel about those games, but I did have Southern with eight wins and 6-2 in conference. I for Southern though, they can't have a season like last season where they won so many last minute games. That's not sustainable long term. So for Southern to be a division champ this season, they have to play better offensively. They have to play better consistently. You can't put so much on your defense. And I think if they were in the East, they'd probably be third or fourth. But in the West right now, because there's so many questions and so much newness, it's easy to put them at the top spot because they won the division last year. Now, if you really want me to say, I would probably put something at fourth, but I couldn't really justify that for the sake of the show. I just say that kind of stuff because that's what I like to say. But the West, put them all in the hat, put 5 names in the hat and pull the 5, and you can probably comfortably say anybody can be 1 through 5 and be fine with that. That's our early order of finish. Like I said, we'll be back with this probably closer to the start of the season. Once we start to get through our previews, which will be coming in the next few weeks. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawells. Signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.